Hello, this webinar is titled Gamesmanship versus Stewardship, the terrible damage it does. And I feel like this is a very important webinar. Gamesmanship is not sportsmanship. Sportsmanship can be defined as the proper consideration for fairness, ethics, respect, and a sense of fellowship with one's competitors. Gamesmanship is defined as using dubious methods to win or gain a serious advantage, using whatever dubious methods possible to achieve the desired end, using psychological tricks to intimidate or confuse one's opponent, using various ploys and tactics to gain a psychological advantage, pushing the rules to the limit without getting caught, in other words, winning at all cost. Stephen Potter, who is the originator of the term, tells about how the idea and concept dawned on him. He tells of a tennis match where he took advantage of the sincerity of his opponents. He used a psychological trick to unnerve them, proceeded to win the match, and then felt no remorse for his actions and was quite satisfied with the win. Well, synonyms of gamesmanship include cheating, brinksmanship, gaming the system, unsportsmanlike conduct, match fixing, and one-upmanship. Let's take a look at a few of these words because they give us insight into the word gamesmanship. Brinksmanship is defined as follows: the practice of pushing dangerous events to the brink of disaster in order to achieve the most advantageous outcome. Gaming the system is defined as using the rules and procedures meant to protect the system instead to manipulate the system for a desired outcome. These are all a part of the gamesmanship mentality. Gamesmanship makes particular sense when you live in a world with no moral absolutes. If there is no God, there is no moral absolutes, and win at all costs makes total sense. The end justifies the means, and there's no guilt or shame. Just do anything to win. If you take some courageous analysis of this, these tactics can be seen if people are willing to take an honest look. The problem is that the world is so corrupt and manipulated because so many people keep their head in the sand and don't want to face reality. Now, opposed to these terms, let's take a look at the word stewardship, the careful and responsible management of something entrusted to one's care. Since this whole series is about being a steward of your vote, I want to take a look at some things that incrementally move us from voting as an act of stewardship to gamemanship. Well, the founders in their original design is that voting would be an act of stewardship, and this became complete when the vote was extended to all. But then from there, gerrymandered districts, no voter IDs, same-day voting, extended or overexpansive early voting, turnout the vote tactics, and incestuous media relationships with politicians all move us from an anchor point of voting as an act of stewardship to gamesmanship. Let's explore some of these and see if we can find any agreement on these things. Let's take a look at gerrymandering as an act of gamesmanship. Before we take a look at the issue of gerrymandering, let's take a look at well-drawn districts. This is the state of Iowa and its 4 congressional districts. Well-drawn districts are supposed to be geographically contiguous, compact in shape, and roughly equal in the size of its population. And you can observe that these districts meet these requirements. Well, in Boston in 1812, there was a governor named Elbridge Gerry, and during that election period, he manipulated the district boundaries to create partisan advantage for his districts, and this was what became known as gerrymandering. Here are some modern-day examples of gerrymandered districts in Illinois, another in Illinois, in Georgia, in Louisiana, in North Carolina, in Florida. These are all creatures of gamesmanship, and this little cartoon I think says it well. Fairy goose, fairy gander, the legendary gerrymander, but you can bet you've seen nothing yet, the districts of the Marylander. And so in Maryland they had issues too. Well-drawn districts are possible. We've already looked at the example of Iowa. Here's Missouri. Here's Indiana. And you can say these are square and rectangular, so they're relatively easy, but even in a geographically diverse state like Virginia, you can see that there can be well-drawn districts that meet the requirements. Well, let's take a look at gamesmanship as it pertains to voter ID. This seems like a delicate topic that you hear anxious feelings about in the news, but 70% of Americans want voter ID laws, and I think this cartoon portrays this well. Important things you need a picture ID for: to buy alcohol, to go to the movies if it's an R-rated movie, to cash a check, to fly in an airplane, to drive a car, to use your credit card, to work at the Justice Department, even to go to an NAACP convention, but not to vote for the most powerful man in the world? This just doesn't make sense. 70% want it, but when it's suggested we need voter ID for elections like every other advanced democracy, like Brazil, Canada, Germany, Netherlands, Switzerland, and others, the answer that is instantly supplied is you're a racist. This seems like a technique of a gamesman. Let's take a look at another category that gamesmanship exploits, overexpansive early voting. Various states have different time limits on early voting. Some don't have it at all, but then you have 5 days, 10 days, 15 days, 20, 25, 30, 35, 40, 45, even 46 days of early voting. Each day that passes adds to potential voter fraud. The impact of debates is reduced because debates that occur right before Election Day are not accounted for in people's extremely early vote. The impact of current events is reduced for the same reason. And so the potential here for increasing gamesmanship and decreasing stewardship fabulously exists because of the overexpansive amount of days that some states allow. Well, I don't know what the right amount is, but couldn't we reduce the number of days in early voting to increase the idea of being a steward of our vote? Gamesmanship is also influenced by turnout tactics. This is to get people to think as a group, to shame them into voting, to scare them into voting, to feed them to vote, to make contributions of some sort to get them to vote, to have people vote multiple times or have the dead vote or illegals vote. These are all tactics and they work in combination with the overexpansive early voting process. So a key question becomes, is our country better off if more people vote? Well, let me give you a provocative answer. No. Our country would be better off if more people were stewards of their vote. This might even be true even if less people voted, if they were thoughtful, careful, and studied. But our country is worse off if more people voting are just being gamed by the gamesmen, that they don't care, they're not studied, they simply vote for their party or with their group. This is not being a steward of our vote and being a steward for future generations. This last item I want to take a look at is the incestuous media, and the definition here is excessively close and resistant to outside influence. And I've used this chart before in other webinars, the difference between politicians and statesmen. And the politicians list includes such things as people, personalities, persona, and this fits the media to the T. It deals with intrigue, strategy, personalities, emotions, anxiety, strategy analysis, making themselves look good, both the politicians and the media. And they feed off one another. The politicians need the media and the media need the politicians. So how do we move toward a greater act of stewardship? Well, this is what we have now. How can it be corrected? Well, here are some of the ideas that we've discussed. Well-drawn districts, voter ID, shortening of early voting, allow natural voter turnout based on the candidate's positions and how he articulates his vision, not producing voter turnout using gamesmanship tactics. Where's the media in all this? Who knows? The reaction to all this can be well anticipated. Those that practice gamesmanship will shriek, complain, calls of racism will be raised, name-calling, everything you can imagine. Well, if that's the case, this raises some real questions for all of us. Where are we as a country? Do we believe, like Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King, that the content of our character matters anymore? Or are we here as a nation of gamesmen? What about you? Do you care about power, winning at all costs in your political party? Or are you a careful and responsible manager of something that's been entrusted to you? Is the political party or candidate you're attracted to a gamesman or a steward? What does that say about you? Our national civic life is not designed to be a game and run by gamesmen. We're to be stewards for our future generations of the republic that's been handed to us. I hope these thoughts have been helpful as we move toward greater stewardship of this special privilege. This is U.S. Civics Training. Thanks for listening.